I'm here with the writers, directors, and producers of King Baby, Kit and Aaron. Thank you both so much for taking time to meet with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
The film has been called, you've called the film a modern fairy tale, what we're looking at here. Were there specific fairy tales you channeled from when you were creating the idea for King Baby? Were there any?
I will pass it off to you.
Not specific fairy tales in the sense of, like one of Grimm's fairy tales, but definitely like the sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of nod to those worlds, And also I think, there's something, when we think of fairy tales, I think we think of something as quite conventional, but they are mad, Fairy tales are insane, about witches that eat babies and, like Rumpelstiltskin and all of that stuff. But I would say the most pertinent fairy tales that really kind of had a core influence on, the beginnings of the project were Angela Carter's fairy tales, where they're kind of like feminist rewritings of, for example, Little Red Riding Hood and stuff like that. So yeah. So I would say she played a big part in the kind of concept from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think fairy tales were also a way in for us to build the world. And how to present the world to the audience, and I think it just became a useful framework to bring people in and to explore what we wanted to explore.
I started getting some hints of the Emperor's New Clothes at different times.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was one that kind of kept popping back up into my head.
Yes.
The setting is so beautiful where you film this. When I was watching this, at first I thought, I'm like, wait, are they at the Hellfire Club in Ireland? I'm like, wait a minute. Oh no, that's not where they are. I climbed that sucker last year, that mountainous hill. Yeah. Beautiful views, but tiresome. How did you find that location?
My partner at the time, and a good friend of mine still, her mother, who's also a good friend of mine, is the actress Sophie Duez, and she's quite known in France. And she lives in the south of France. And the original idea for the film was to do it quite a bit smaller and to bring some friends over from Canada, some technicians over, and shoot it in her back garden and do something really contained and really experimental. But she sent us all these photos sort of out of the blue one day. And it was of this location, and she had found it about a 30-minute drive from where she lives. And she spoke to the association that ran it, and they all knew her from her acting work. And oh my goodness, Sophie Duez is asking us to do this. And they agreed to let us use it for a week of prep and 3 weeks of shooting for a very small donation to the association. They really made themselves so available to the film that we had to shoot it there. And as a result of that, we had to abandon this kind of truly extremely experimental, really minimalist idea, and I guess rise to the challenge that the location gave us, because as you said, it is so beautiful that you just want to honor that with every element of the film, from the acting, the cinematography, the production design, the costumes. Everything has to live up to the location that we found. So it was a real blessing, I think. Yeah.
Well, and given some of the themes and some of the topics that we're watching that are
Perfect.
so heavy and not light at all, these ideas of the power struggle, the class system, gender issues, toxic masculinity, and all these things to be played against such a beautiful backdrop. Mm-hmm. It was an interesting juxtaposition to watch. So what were in the vein with some of those themes, were there specific ones you were trying to highlight? Like, what was the main point you were trying to get across with the film?
Yeah, I think it's funny because we did design it with a kind of a core point, and we'll talk about that. but it was also, in order to get there, we did travel through all the themes that you're talking about and build something. It's been so interesting to read people's reactions to the film and reviews of the film, because somebody will pick up on something that was really intentional, somebody will pick up on something that we hadn't considered, and we wanted to leave a bit of space for interpretation while being laser focused on what we wanted to say. I think you could probably...
And I think, you know, it's about the kind of like, you know, all of these themes that you're mentioning are kind of, they're all intersectional to the theme of patriarchy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they all, it's an umbrella that holds within it misogyny, you know, like toxic narcissism, violence, and, you know, lots of other, and of course, as you mentioned, like, you know, like class, you know, classism and the hierarchies of a kind of class structure, which, say, in England is still very resonant today. So I think it's, you know, the core theme is patriarchy, but within that are all the kind of sub-themes that exist, you know, within that umbrella.
So the two actors that you had, how did you find them? Because this is quite an intimate performance that the two of them had to do. Talk to me about them a little bit, like how you found them, had they worked together prior, and what it was like to kind of throw them into this.
Yeah, of course. So this is my first feature film. It's Aaron's second feature film, but I come from a background in theatre. So both Graham Dixon and Neil Chinnock were performers and creators that I've known. Sort of Neil I trained with when I was, you know, at drama school, and then we worked together. He was in one of my shows, and always, you know, even at drama school, he was the actor that everybody wanted to work with. You know, such a humble, nice guy with such an incredible, you know, skill and sort of mastery of his craft. So I always knew that I wanted to work with Neil, you know, at some point, if we ended up making a film that was right. And Graham, I had seen when I had a show in Edinburgh. He had this show called The Narcissist. He's primarily an improv guy, you know, and crafts his own work and does, you know, has lots of hats actually. And I'd seen this show, The Narcissist, and it was just phenomenal. And his performance was so outstanding. And there was something so kind of like, there was a kind of relatable foppish Britishness with a tinge of madness, which, you know, I think neither me nor Aaron can imagine the king or the servant being played by anyone else. And we had a very rigorous rehearsal schedule, so we rehearsed for 10 days before we started shooting, and worked with them in incredible detail, you know, like carving out each scene, you know. So we knew that with the time constraint, with the budget constraint, you know, that the performances really had to kind of do so much heavy lifting. So it was one of our primary focuses, one of the most important aspects. You know, everything else was important too, but it was just something we knew that it had to be handled with a lot of energy and care.
Yeah, and I want to say too, I mean, Kit ran the rehearsal process, and I was there for most of it, but the nature of there being two of us is sometimes you run off and, you know, and then come back. But I was around for most of the rehearsal process, and it was just so incredible to watch Kit work, you know, because we've been writing together for about 5 years, and we're so in sync and intentional about our writing and brutal with each other about our writing, always trying to make sure that it is as good as it can be, or as good as we're able to make it together. So it was quite a new thing to see it be translated into performance. And it was such a exciting moment for me to see that he had a plan for translating the absurd, insane writing that we could both visualize, but into performance, and to find the right actors and to work with those right actors for the role to get to somewhere really specific. So they are the right actors, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't completely shaped. You know, Graham comes from improvisation, but there was no real improvisation of the dialogue. You know, it was very specific, and it was just a joy to watch. So Thank you. No, thank you.
And so you two first, maybe not the first time you met, but the first time you worked together was on, film-wise, was on Forgotten Man.
Almost as a technicality, that's true, because
Okay.
Forgotten Man was my first feature.
Right.
And at the time that I was putting it together, I just moved to London, and I was so inspired by everyone around me. Mm-hmm. And Kit and I were friends through a friend. So we weren't calling each other up to go for coffee or anything. But I would go and see his theater work, and his theater work was stunning, and I loved it, and I just wanted him to be part of the work that I was doing. So I asked, So I asked him to be, So I asked him if he would act in my film, and he reluctantly agreed. And it was really years later when his play Testosterone was touring the world, that he played in Vancouver, and I was in Vancouver at the time, and we met over a drink and got to know each other again, and had the idea to start writing and working together.
Yeah.
And so that was building into the question, because you had acted in the first film, and this is your first film, congratulations.
Thank you.
Your second, congrats.
Thanks.
What made you decide to want to stay behind the camera as opposed to being one of...
I don't.
So excited.
No. I mean, I don't really think of myself as an actor. I'm so grateful that I train. I mean, I did 1 year. I didn't do 3 years of actor training. So I just did 1 year, like a postgraduate acting course. But I enjoyed it sometimes, but it wasn't where my heart was. And I would sometimes just be in my own shows because it was cheaper. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I don't have to pay myself. I'll do this. I'll handle this. And so when Arran very sweetly asked me to be in his film, I did a terrible job. I think I had to. I decided I was going to have a Scottish accent, which I couldn't do. So poor Arran. I'm very sorry.
Sorry, no, finish.
No, that's okay. I've kind of forgotten what the original question. Talking about acting. Yeah, I've always written, and I've always loved directing. So yeah. But I would say that training as an actor has been invaluable in helping me understand how to work with actors. And I kind of almost feel that directors there should be mandatory, like at least a month's acting training or something.
Agreed wholeheartedly.
Or just team up with somebody who's done it for years, and then I can focus on other stuff. I'm just kidding. I'm so passionate about performance, but yeah, I think in the way, like I've produced a few friends' films and been very active producing my first 2 features, and I don't want to do that at all. If I never do anything related to producing again, other than how it intersects with the artistic choices for the film, I'd be thrilled. But it's just a necessity, and and we do it, and and I hope I try to do it well. And maybe you're the same with acting. I think he does it very well, but it's also maybe out of necessity, not desire.
You're a way better producer than I am an actor, and that is fact.
No.
What do you hope that people take away from the film when they walk out of it?
I'll start and then you finish.
Yeah.
I'll set it up. You knock it down.
Right.
It's funny because I think, although I don't know if this is a good answer, so if it is, you could disagree.
Yeah, right.
I think in a way, the film starts out, it's so fun and playful and recognizable, but it's safe. You sort of, it's on the screen, the behavior's kind of bad, but it's bad in a playful way. And then you get some hope as things evolve, for this sort of saving the standing and good grace of men, and then perhaps that hope is dashed. And I think by the time people leave, what I wanted the audience to take with them is something like exhaustion for what we put up with in men and in patriarchy, in power structures, in politics, in our day-to-day lives, and to just think, I'm tired of this shit, and to have that start a kind of skepticism about the interactions in their own life and what we put up with and what we sort of brush under the rug, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think I agree, and we've spoken about that quite a lot, and we're definitely on the same page with that. I would say also, I like people to leave with a sense of a feeling, a frustration with the sense that we're all complicit in a way of, you know, perpetuating these structures, you know, and that we all have a responsibility, and partly that is a kind of cruel theatre with the audience where they're laughing until you realise too late almost that you're laughing at the darkest things, you know what I mean? Like everything you found funny and sort of sweet and lovable and hapless becomes something so monstrous and so destructive and so self-destructive as well, so that, you know, we hope that by the end the laughter is kind of gone and there's almost a feeling of sort of regret for having enjoyed these men.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to meet with me.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, man.